You've seen him before. He's the face of uranium in Australia. Jonathan Fisher, come on down. What's happening in Parliament? Because I see you, I see you and Chris Bowen. You guys look like mates on LinkedIn. Yeah. We might keep that. We might not. Okay, what about Roger Cook's recent trip to Japan?
The Japanese would really love some uranium from us.
You reckon Donald Trump's going to be talking about that when he meets with Albo?
Because the unfortunate thing we have in Australia, and I know I've mentioned this before, it gets back to The Simpsons, is that because we don't have a civilian nuclear industry in Australia and people aren't really aware of uranium, they get their information and they absorb it from these sort of subconscious sources. And one of those sources growing up was The Simpsons, funnily enough. And that's why people still think that radioactive waste is green and oozy, is because they see it on The Simpsons.
Right, mate. Cauldron Energy.
Yeah.
Where are we at?
Thank you for asking. We've got a super exciting time coming up. My team's on site now.
Welcome back to another episode on the Gold Room podcast. You've seen him before. He's the face of uranium in Australia. Jonathan Fisher, come on down.
G'day,
Thanks
Josh.
very much,
mate. Thanks for having me back.
Not
thanks
a problem.
For having me back. I've been watching your travels.
Yeah, cool.
Watching the potty and listening to your trekking and stuff, and just keen to come back and see how you've done and the success you've had raising the money for the miners' promise. Fantastic.
Yeah, cool, man. Thank you very much. Look, just come back last week.
You're in one piece. You do hear some nasty stories about people falling off the perch. So
I know.
Great to see.
Look, I keep saying this to people. People say, "Oh, you went to Everest," and I was like, "Wow, I went to the bottom of Everest. I went to base camp
in shorts."
In shorts. Yeah, it wasn't cold till the next day, so that's fine. But mate, also thank you very much for putting a bloody donation in, because they're two amazing charities, the Miners' Promise and Mission Australia. So I do my part, and
mate, the least we can do. I mean, you guys do so much good work for supporting the industry and helping us get our stories out there, and Miners' Promise does good work too. I mean, we can all put in a little bit. Doesn't have to be much, and make sure we get to that goal.
Yeah, so we've done 74 full episodes so far, and some of the guests that have come on have dug deep and reached into their pockets, and for businesses, obviously it's tax deductible. I don't know if anyone knows that. If you're in business,
that actually.
Well, you bloody well should.
There we go. All right, I'll talk to the accountant for Cauldron. Yep,
mate. Listen, last time you were here, we went over. It was an exciting time.
Yep.
There was a possible change of government, which
federal and state. Yep.
And there would have been changes for uranium mining. You would hope. There may have even been. There was obviously talks. It was very political about possible nuclear energy in Australia, which I think would have been fantastic. It would have been amazing. So we didn't get a change of government. Do you think that held us back in Australia?
I think, I'm assuming the Liberal Party is doing a lot of soul searching around their approach they took on nuclear energy. And I think there has been some criticism about the way that they prosecuted that case. And I think you will see them coming back to the market, the political market, with a revised strategy. I assume will feature nuclear in some way, shape or form, because they still understand the benefits of it, but they perhaps need to sell it in a better way. Has that held us back? I think, unfortunately, that it was an extremely polarising election, and the issue in the electorate is that they conflate nuclear energy in Australia with uranium mining for export. And because of that, I think uranium mining for export, we've had to work harder to communicate that we're a separate issue to building reactors in Australia. And that's working harder to communicate to the electorate, but also to the state government. We need to say, no, I understand you don't support nuclear energy in Australia right now or in WA, but that doesn't mean you can't support uranium mining for export to help our global partners decarbonise. Sure. And so that's a lot of the messaging you'll see coming out of us in the next little while.
Mate, what's happening in Parliament? Because I see you and Chris Bowen. You guys look like mates on LinkedIn. So
yeah, Chris. I'm pretty careful these days. I've actually usually given Albo a little bit of leeway, although not so much these days. I'm quite happy to call out what I see as suboptimal performance from the Prime Minister. I've never had that problem with the Energy Minister. I'm very clear in putting out an alternative view on where we should go with energy policy in Australia. That doesn't make for strong friendships with Chris. I have reached out to him many times.
I've seen it.
To no avail. He has obviously left Twitter or X as a platform. He kept getting ratioed, which means more laughs and than likes, essentially. Yep. And he's, it looks like he's in danger of doing that on LinkedIn too. I mean,
Is he running his own LinkedIn profile?
No, actually
he'd have some media.
Oh yeah, no, there was.
Right?
He did advertise for a social media coordinator about 6 months ago. That got sent around some WhatsApp groups. People suggested we should apply. But my understanding of the way they run that is it's a one-way communication tool for them. So they put out the message there, but do not engage with the feedback on it. Now, that's very differently to the way I run social media. I'm very responsive, always keen to hear what people think of not only the content but the overall strategy. Yeah,
educated discussion.
Yeah, and that doesn't seem to be the way that Mr. Bowen runs his account. In fact, in the last few weeks, I've maybe through more good fortune and luck than the timing, but I've happened to be a very early commenter on some of his posts, and
I've
ratioed him
top
a number
3
of
to
times.
5. First 3 to 5,
and I there is a lot of really personal animus that happens with Mr. Bowen's content. I don't engage in that, but I just want to put forward some reasonable concerns, well articulated, I hope, and that seems to resonate with the LinkedIn community, which is a bit more formal and proper than Twitter, which is a bit of a cesspool. And those posts and those comments from me seem to be getting a little bit of support.
Okay.
I wish Mr. Bowen would look.
Every time I see you've commented, I always look and I read through the comments and I think, when's he going to bloody reply? I'd love to see a reply.
As I joked, I don't expect a reply. Mr. Bowen is a very busy man. He's working very, very hard to increase the power costs for all Australians.
Okay. Yeah, we might keep that. We might not. Okay, what about Roger Cook's recent trip to Japan? Comments he made. Yes, it's all about gas, but it was mainly about gas.
Very interesting comments from Mr. Cook, and I think if we go back 6 months, Premier Cook surprised almost everyone, certainly including me, when he made some comments about thorium as a potential power source. And the why that's interesting is because in the nuclear industry, thorium is known as the gateway drug. So, you get comfortable with thorium before then realising actually uranium is pretty good too.
Okay.
And so 6 months ago, Cook put that out there, which surprised us. Fantastic. He's talking about radiation, different form, but all good. And then a few weeks ago, he again, off his own back, started talking about the potential for uranium policy change ahead of his trip to Japan. So that certainly has sparked a lot of interest in the ASX junior end in WA, and our share price has increased pretty strongly off the back of those kind of comments, as well as, again, putting out a parliamentary inquiry into the role of Western Australia in helping our global partners decarbonise, including the export of green fuel, long title, which includes uranium. So there's been a number of initiatives there or actions from the government. That didn't come from me, although obviously that's been very consistent with the messaging that we've been saying over the last couple of years. So hopefully that's had an impact.
International push. Yeah. Surely. Our international partners are coming in and saying, and he'll be listening.
So the day before Premier Cook and the mining minister were due to go to Japan, we had Japanese trading companies reaching out saying, "This is great, Jono, does that mean you can sell us uranium?" People don't realise that the Japanese trading companies, I use the expression running around like headless chickens. At the moment, they are desperate for uranium from Australia. The fact is there's just no spare supply over the next few years.
Why why Australian uranium and not from elsewhere?
Well, it's from elsewhere too. So Japan, when they closed down their reactor fleet post Fukushima, they had a large national stockpile of uranium, which they let go.
Yep.
They are now not only starting their previously idled reactors, restarting them, they are now planning for new build in nuclear. They need to do that because they need nuclear for baseload generation to hit the decarbonisation objectives. They also need to transition from coal to gas, which is a lot of what Mr. Cook was there to talk about. So in addition to that, again, people won't realise that the Japanese have a long and storied history in uranium investment in Australia. They used to own half the Honeymoon mine in South Australia, which is just reopened by Boss. In addition, they obviously have very large investments in the LNG industry in WA and the iron ore industry. So, who is a better natural partner to say and maybe suggest to the WA government that, geez, the Japanese would really love some uranium from us.
You reckon Donald Trump's going to be talking about that when he meets with Albo?
Yeah, well, I don't know the turnaround time on this, but by the time
it's out on Thursday.
Yeah, so by the time this is out, this meeting will have happened, right?
Sorry, Dimitri.
The meeting is tonight, Aussie time, Monday US time.
Yep.
I think there will be a chat, obviously, on critical minerals. The latest reporting is that Federal Resources Minister Madeleine King is attending the meeting also, and I certainly hope that Mr. Trump brings up the topic of uranium supply from their fantastic strategic partner Australia, who has more uranium than anywhere else on Earth. One of the biggest risks to the global nuclear renaissance and to Trump's energy dominance agenda is a lack of supply of available uranium from strategically aligned nations. So you don't want it from Kazakhstan, you don't want it from Russia, you don't want it from China. Prefer not to have it from Nigeria and the junta. Where do you want it from? You want it from Canada and you want it from Australia. Mm. So, hopefully Albo's been briefed, but he's so scared of the nuclear word and therefore uranium because he thinks one leads the other and he has trouble differentiating the two, although I say they're separate. But hopefully from the US side, the US president is well briefed.
Hopefully he wears bloody a suit and not track pants and a hoodie.
Yeah, and there's been some very funny memes about how that meeting might go with Mr. Trump. So let's watch with bated breath.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be bloody interesting. Right, mate. Cauldron Energy.
Yeah.
Where are we at?
So we've got and thank you for asking. We've got a super exciting time coming up. My team's on site now. We're just rejudging the camp a little bit, putting in a new donga. We've got for the first time. We've got a donga with ensuite bathrooms.
Oh, mate, modernisation.
Modernisation, but also it's a sign of the times. We have co-ed teams up on site, and the separation is sort of very helpful for that.
Yep.
We've got drillers starting in a few weeks.
What drilling company are you using?
We're using Wallace.
Okay.
Team Wallace.
Oh, yeah. Kim and the team.
Kim, fantastic. They drilled for us last year. They've drilled a lot of the time for the uranium part of Yanri going back 10 years.
Oh, wow, cool.
So Kim, not always the cheapest, but possibly the best.
Oh, far out. That's awesome.
No, I got a lot of time for the boys.
Yep.
And we've also at the same time signed a sort of a potentially game-changing agreement with a group called Navoiran.
That's one of my questions, mate. Thanks very much for jumping on that. I've got tell us about the Navoiran deal.
So Navoiran, difficult name to say, not necessarily a household name, but they are the Uzbekistani National Uranium Company. Again, that's not going to ring too many bells for people, but so right now about 50% of the world's uranium comes out of In-Situ Recovery, ISR, and most of that comes out of Kazakhstan. People think that the Kazakhstanis came up with ISR uranium mining. In fact, they didn't. It was the Uzbekistanis that provided that technology to Kazakhstan. But the Uzbeks have 42 different deposits in ISR. They've seen every geological condition and quirk and anomaly and difficulty, and they know how to solve those issues. Mm. And so when we look to build Yanri in a world's best practice manner and operate it in an efficient manner, we want a bigger brother there who's seen it all before, and that's Navoiran.
Wow.
So
when you explained it to me, you want to go into explain a little bit about that mining process.
So
to me, it's just a simple guy.
Yep.
I thought, obviously when you got tanks above ground and you're working through a leaching process.
Yep.
But then you're explaining leaching underground.
Yes.
So go on to that.
So the reason you've seen ISR mining go from about 10% of global uranium production to over 50% over the last 2 decades. Now, that has happened because ISR is cheaper to mine, so it's cheaper CapEx and cheaper OpEx. So over the last 2 decades, we've had depressed uranium pricing, and so the only projects that could get up are ISR projects. Essentially, a lot of that out of Kazakhstan, some out of the US, some out of Australia. We have 2 operating ISR projects in South Australia, Beverley 4 Mile and the Honeymoon project, where I was out on site at Honeymoon a couple of weeks ago. So not many projects globally are capable of ISR, so you need to have your in-ground geological conditions correct, and that is you need to have a deposit that you can push fluid through underground, so it can't be bound up in hard rock. So there's got to be a sort of a pebbly, sandy kind of material. And you have to have hydrological conditions so that you're not going to be polluting the groundwater. So your impermeable cap and impermeable base and controls like a channel on either side.
Okay.
And if you do that and you meet all those conditions, then because you don't physically mine the material, there's no digging. And because you're not physically mining material, there's no crushing. That means there's no dust.
Wow.
So no mining and no crushing is a lot lower power requirement, so you don't need as big a power station, and it makes things a lot cheaper to build. Crushers are expensive. And no dust, well, that's good for workers because one of the main worries you have in uranium is exposure, radiation exposure, and you get that through the skin, but that's not actually so much of a worry. The worry is actually inhalation of radioactive dust.
Yep.
And so with ISR, much less of an opportunity for that to happen. You do have alternative exposure pathways through radon in the water and stuff like that, but that's much easier controlled than dust. Yep. So dust is a problem. So we are at pains to say that ISR is the bee's knees of uranium mining, and we're lucky enough to have a deposit in WA that's amenable to it. Hence, teaming up with the world's best ISR uranium company. Boom.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Mate, how does it go with, obviously there's a ban on uranium mining.
Yep.
How are you able to drill? How are you able to explore? I don't get
so
that.
this is I'll explain how, and then we say, well, is that consistent? Doesn't make sense. So in WA, there is no legislative ban on uranium mining, to be clear. There is no legislation that needs to change to overturn the ban. The ban is a policy ban of the Australian Labor Party, who happens to be in government. So they just say, we're directing the department not to endorse uranium as one of the allowed mining minerals on a mining lease. That says nothing about exploration. So under ELs and everything, yep, you can drill for it, whatever, that's fine. So that's how it happens. Now, does that make sense? Well,
absolutely not. Even to a simpleton like me.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we're having a lot of success demonstrating to the community these sort of quirks and anomalies.
What's the feedback on that?
The feedback I get is universally pretty positive. I think there is a lot of people that are getting the message around mining for export and building reactors is two different things, and you're totally acceptable to support that but not want to do that in Australia. And so, people understand that WA is just, it's why we're here, right? Exactly. Mining people, it's a mining community. Yep. The mining intelligence, you call it, intelligence quotient. We've got an MQ, a mining quotient in Perth, unparalleled. Like when I talk to people in Sydney about mining, they just do not get it. And the benefit the mining community and investment has for the rest of the economy. Perth, we get it.
We see it.
We see it. We live it every day.
Yep.
And so it's really not a very big leap for people to understand the opportunities for uranium export and how it can really help diversify WA's economy.
You've been spending a bit of bloody time on the news, haven't you? not just a couple of little podcasts here and there. You've been was it Channel 9?
That I think that last one was Sky.
Yeah, okay.
Sky News. Yeah, so it's that was funny. I'm obviously, journos. If you've got a bit of a profile and they know that you can talk in front of a camera and talk live, so nothing's scripted. I think, like, the other weekend I was at soccer training with the kids on Saturday morning, and something had happened overnight, which meant that they wanted to have a piece in camera in studio, and they called up and desperately saying, well, geez, can you make it? I know it's a Saturday. And I was like, oh God, I'm going to have to negotiate this with the missus. So probably did that, and it was in studio an hour later.
So what's public perception?
So that piece, there's public perception around. At the moment, the questions is all around Trump and Albo and what's going to be happening there. This is in Sydney. The questions were. I think the public perception is that I think there's a growing realisation that this nuclear renaissance thing is not going away internationally.
60 currently, 60 just over 60 nuclear reactors are either, I think, under construction or plans for construction.
Yeah, so 60, and that number's been pretty stable. It's come up a bit, but that's been pretty stable last couple of years. But what you've seen is restarts happening, and they are happening. In fact, there's no more significant a restart than 3 Mile Island. So 3 Mile Island is where they had the little partial meltdown in 1979.
Yep.
Microsoft is restarting. Well, Constellation will restart that, being paid for by Microsoft. They're running ahead of time and ahead of budget on that restart.
Yep.
So, everything we've heard in Australia is you can't build nuclear on time, you can't build it on budget. Well, the US is restarting on time, on budget. It's a phenomenal outcome. You've then had, so that's restarts, and there's a whole number of those, and Clinton Clean Energy Centre is also coming back up to speed. So there's a lot of that activity. But then you're having life extensions. And that is to say, instead of closing a reactor next year, we're going to keep it open for another 20 years. And so the US is licensing reactors that were originally licensed for 40 years. They had already been life extended to 60 years, and they're now pushing them out to 80 years.
Wow.
And so that's the cheapest nuclear megawatts you get is a life extension. The French, for example, then the French have had all sorts of problems in building new ones. The EPR design was tricky. They're now doing the EPR2, which is a more constructible design. But they've just announced that they're going to be life extending 20 of their 1,300 megawatt reactors for another 20 years. And it's only going to cost them about 7 billion euros. So that's super cheap. And all of that means there's growth in nuclear despite, before we even get into actual new build. And those actual new builds are, yes, they're in planning, and Westinghouse is going to be building a fleet of them. And one of the things that the US administration, the White House, is doing is streamlining approvals to make sure these things get, a leg up.
Yeah, that's what you need.
Yep.
What do you believe that the public is still getting wrong about uranium and nuclear?
Yeah,
they're two, as we've discussed. They're two different things.
Yeah, it is. So we had in September, the World Nuclear Association conference in London. It's a big thing, and they released 2 reports in the lead up or at that conference. One is the nuclear performance report, how's the industry done, and the second is the nuclear fuel forecast, how much uranium are we going to need. And so this year it showed that the 2024 year generated more nuclear energy globally ever. It's the highest generation we've ever had in nuclear. And so that's come back. The previous peak was in the early 2000s.
Yep.
Now, that is really at odds with what we'd been hearing in Australia around, nuclear's, if you listen to Zali Steggall, nuclear's got no future, it's closing down, it's a dying industry. So before new build has even really got started in the West, we've had India and China just building like there's no tomorrow. And yes, they're building renewables. It's not an either or story. It's how do we build out a diversified portfolio of reliable generation. So highest generation year on record. I think that surprises most people. And if you asked 100 people on the street, I don't think anyone would believe that. So that's true. The second thing that I think we're still getting wrong, although this is what I'm at pains to explain to people, is uranium for export is very different to nuclear in Australia, building reactors in Australia. And we can do one without the other. And
we can do one
and then,
next year.
Yeah, correct. Well, so we do mine uranium out of South Australia.
Yes.
We can overturn uranium bans in WA and Queensland very simply. The process of overturning the bans is very easy.
What's involved?
So in WA, we have a memo from the Premier to the head of the Department of Mines to say, yep, it's okay, done. Literally.
Just a memo.
Yep, that's
Send
it.
an email.
Sure. So that's it. In Queensland, yeah, it requires legislation, but in Queensland, you only have one House of Parliament. So it's a unicameral system. So you don't have to negotiate with crazies in the upper house in Queensland. So, the Premier makes his mind. They've got a majority. It gets done in relatively short order.
Yep.
What happens then is, yes, it takes a while to stand up a project, to get approvals and to get into construction and operate. But what you will see almost overnight is an exploration boom, especially in WA. So we've got huge amounts of sort of sniffs of historical uranium hits, but there just has been no focus on it in the last 20 years. You will see uranium exploration go through the roof, and that's what I'm sure a lot of the drillers...
about 40-odd bloody ex-juniors right now, isn't there?
Yeah, on ASX, maybe more. And you will see exploration activity go through the roof in uranium in WA, which will be a very near-term thing. That's great for the drillers. It's great for the laboratories. It's great for the site services. It's great for communities because it's not just iron ore where they'll be in one area. It's everywhere. If you look at the sort of location of where uranium is in WA, it's pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
So we're surrounded by it. And then as we work through exploration, resource definition, feasibility and everything, we get into project development operation. It's a fantastic opportunity.
Mate, how do you explain the Lucas Heights situation to your everyday Australian?
Well, I hope people are starting to understand what Lucas Heights is. We operate what we call the OPAL, or the Australian Open Pool Light Water Reactor, which is it's one of those reactors. I think maybe people have seen them on the internet, where it is a pool, so you can see down 5 meters of water and you can see the glow of the reactor. That's a multi-purpose reactor that has a number of benefits for Australia. One of which is we're a world leader in production of certain medical isotopes, and that's for radiotherapy for cancer treatment. I hope I don't get tears in the eyes, but because it's a very personal event. My father, who you met, he's alive today because of Opal.
Yep.
1 in 2 people will be affected by cancer in Australia, if not more. Your friends and family are alive because of the expertise the Australian has in that, and especially for men out there. Some of the next generation of prostate cancer is being developed at Lucas Heights. It's fantastic. Yep. The other thing we do is
you can't just bury your head in the sand with that information.
You shouldn't, and it is in I don't have my Opal, I don't have my ANSTO cap with me today, but we should be just singing that from the rafters. It is such a national asset for Australia, and for so long, ANSTO was they didn't want to put their head above the parapet. But they're sort of getting to the point now where they are championing their cause a bit, and we are also produce over 50% of a certain of the world's high quality silicon that is needed for all sorts of high end electronics. Literally over half the market we irradiate in Sydney.
Wow!
It is amazing. Wow. It is amazing. I would recommend anyone to go and do one of the public tours at ANSTO. Again, actually, I was down at ANSTO a couple of weeks ago again doing something. It's just a brilliant place to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amazing. Mate, tell me the consequences that we will face if we don't lift this uranium ban.
I think in WA we've lived on the back of the iron ore boom for a long time, and everyone has done well in mining, and that's flowed through to the general community, and we've got great new hospitals, and we've got MetroNet and everything else off the back of those. 1 in every $4 the government spends is directly from iron ore, right? Not aside from the broader mining industry. I think it's the role of government is to look 5 years ahead and go, well, how do we plan to make sure that our prosperity keeps going in the medium term? And yeah, it takes time to stand up whole new industries, but that's why I've got a plan for them, get them going now. And so I Simandou, which is the big iron ore mine in Guinea, is due to ship first iron ore in November this year. That's going to go straight to China. Now, it might be late. and it might, there might be delays in ramp up, but that multi-billion-dollar project is going to pump up to 100 million tonnes of new super high-grade iron ore into China. That grade is better than what we get out of the Pilbara. It's at 65%.
What do you think it's going to do to the iron ore industry?
So I used to sell
Slow it down?
I used to sell iron ore.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing where so what the iron ore market basically clears where marginal cost and marginal revenue meet. So BHP and FMG and Hancock and all that they'll keep pumping out those same tonnes because they're low cost. But what it does is displaces high cost tonnes, domestic Chinese production, some other stuff. It displaces those high cost tonnes out on the right of the curve, and that therefore drops where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. It will drop the iron ore price.
Yeah, okay.
Now, so we still get the same, hundreds of million tonnes going out of Port Hedland and Dampier, but they'll be at a lower price, and so therefore less royalties for the government. But also with lower profitability, you'll see possibly less expenditure from the majors on growth projects, right? So less capital projects means less construction, and future operations not being prioritised as much. And you've already seen major mining companies in Australia, or major international mining companies with operation in Australia, they are looking elsewhere because, frankly, there's mining jurisdictions that might be seen as friendlier these days. So there's a number of these sort of headwinds that the industry is facing, and I think the government needs to be mindful of, understanding that our wealth comes from mining, and and if we can diversify out into different commodities, we absolutely should be.
Yeah, bloody oath. So, for anyone that's listened to this, what can they be doing? Your everyday Joe public. What can they be doing to assist in changing the narrative?
Look, I would welcome everyone to first, if you've got any questions, call me. You'll find my mobile number is on the internet quite easily, or email address. I would say have the conversation. Raise it
with who?
Raise it with people that don't agree with you. Raise it with your your lefties, your lefty friends or family
at the barbecue.
Yeah, have those discussions over coffee. It needs, every time people start talking about it and people can take, and therefore they become aware of it and they do their own research, and that's what you want. Because the unfortunate thing we have in Australia, and I know I've mentioned this before, it gets back to The Simpsons, is that because we don't have a civilian nuclear industry in Australia and people aren't really aware of uranium, they get their information and they absorb it from these sort of subconscious sources. And one of those sources growing up was The Simpsons, funnily enough. And that's why people still think that radioactive waste is green and oozy, is because they see it on The Simpsons. And so the problem when you're just absorbing this subconscious information is it's wrong. So if people then do take the time to actually go and investigate themselves, more often than not, you find them correcting those subconscious thoughts with proper information and facts. Now, that doesn't mean they become outrageous nuclear supporters overnight, but it might mean they understand the difference between uranium mining and nuclear in Australia, and they might understand that nuclear waste isn't green and oozy, and they might understand that not all radiation is bad. So, please just talk about it.
Do we need to be teaching it at school?
We do need to be teaching it at school. Yeah, absolutely. And there is this frustration that I have in that if you look at the Smart Energy Council, for example, they produce resources for primary schools and secondary schools and tertiary students, resources that teachers can download to teach students about why intermittent renewables is a good thing for the grid. Now, fine, but if the uranium industry tried to do that, do you think
absolutely?
Do you think that would be accepted? Maybe we should try. But I do get very frustrated, and you've probably got less of an issue in Perth than we do. I live in inner city Sydney, so that is pretty, lefty. Where my kids come home from school and they say, "Dad, today I was taught that mining is a bad thing."
I've had that here.
Yeah,
I've had that here with my 11-year-old.
Yeah,
that why are you in mining? It's not sustainable. I've actually spoken about this same thing before, and I said, "Who told you that?"
Yeah,
Oh.
and that is a that is a long-term strategy, and very clever and patient. But that is already, we are struggling as an industry with low levels of STEM and attractiveness of careers in the mining industry. That really should concern us. And I think,
concerns me.
Yeah, well, absolutely, me too. And my kids, let me tell you, my kids are the ones that stand up and go, where do you think your smartphone comes from?
Oh, I
Right?
preach that.
Yeah, so I do enjoy listening, hearing that the kids have sort of heard my message, but I wish, I don't necessarily blame the teachers per se, because the curriculum in New South Wales, the curriculum has certain learning objectives, and there's flexibility in the way those objectives are reached. And there might be objectives around climate change and decarbonisation, but there's not objectives around, necessarily understanding, for example, the role, how do we pay for it? And the role that mining provides in, all these royalties and jobs and everything else. And so the teachers need to teach to the curriculum the objectives to say, okay, well, they need to teach climate change, yet they don't teach the other bits of it. So maybe it's the curriculum that needs to have a little bit of a refocus.
Yep, I agree with that. Mate, thank you very much for coming in and spending the time with me. I think you are the first guest that's come back on the show.
On 75 episodes or something. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm so pleased.
Well, mate, it's always a pleasure talking to you, John. I like, if I'm out anywhere at the RIU conference, it's always awesome to come. Yeah, I know, but it's always awesome to catch up with you.
Indeed. Look, appreciate it. And, here's the next 75. Gold Room going strong.
That's right, yeah.
And keep doing what you're doing, Josh.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you very much for tuning into another episode on the Gold Room podcast. Obviously, Jono Fisher. Follow him on bloody LinkedIn, because I tell you what, he's knowledgeable, and Cauldron Energy is definitely one to watch. Thanks very much.